March 1992, Taos, New Mexico. A letter appeared in the Taos News. It came from a local woman named Katanya Salzman, who claimed she could hear a persistent, low-frequency rumble. It wasn't the sort of sound that others noticed, like traffic or construction. Instead, it was a deep, low vibration that she said followed her from room to room, sometimes keeping her awake for entire nights. At first, it might have been easy to dismiss, but over the coming months, dozens of residents across Taos, New Mexico, began reporting the same thing. People described it as a distant idle of a diesel truck, or the deep hum of unseen machinery. Some even said they could feel it in their bodies as much as they could hear it. By the spring of 1993, the phenomenon had gained so much attention that the town pushed for an official investigation. Scientists from the University of New Mexico, Los Alamos National Laboratory, Sandia National Laboratories, and the Air Force's Phillips Laboratory were brought in. Their team placed microphones, seismic detectors, and electromagnetic sensors throughout Taos, including inside the homes of residents who claimed they could hear the noise. For weeks, they ran measurements, looking for any trace of the signal. But what they found was ordinary background activity, passing cars, distant aircraft, even the vibrations of small animals burrowing underground. But nothing that matched the low-frequency hum that residents insisted was there. In the end, the researchers admitted they had no explanation. The report simply concluded they were, quote, left with a mystery. This event, which became known as the Taos Hum, marked an entry into the modern, documented study into what is now called the worldwide hum. But while Taos was the first case to be investigated with scientific rigor, it was far from the first time the phenomenon had been reported. Welcome to the mystery of the worldwide hum. The hum is not a single isolated event. Instead, it has appeared in towns and cities around the world. In Bristol, England, during the late 1970s, hundreds of locals complained about an unending, low rumbling that made sleep difficult and daily life miserable. In large Scotland and in small German towns such as Darmstadt and Frankfurt, similar complaints arose. In Windsor, Ontario, Canada, reports of a droning sound persisted for years, eventually triggering government inquiries and cross-border studies. And in Kokomo, Indiana, beginning in the early 2000s, the hum became so disruptive that local authorities commissioned acoustic specialists to investigate. Across all these cases, the descriptions are strikingly consistent. The hum is always described as low, mechanical, and persistent. It typically falls into the frequency range of 30 to 80 hertz, low enough to be felt as much as heard. Unlike the roar of traffic or the drone of a factory, the hum is selective. Surveys consistently show that only a small fraction of local population, usually between 2 and 5%, can hear it at all. In Taos, fewer than 1 of 30 residents reported the sound, yet those who did often described severe symptoms: insomnia, nausea, dizziness, headaches, and in some cases, long-term stress and depression. The hum did more than irritate. It entirely disrupted lives. To understand it, researchers have taken multiple approaches. The first and most straightforward explanation is that the hum is simply the product of industrial noise. Distant compressors, air conditioning units, or large engines producing low-frequency vibrations that travel long distances. And indeed, in some cases, investigations have found credible industrial sources. In Kokomo, Indiana, for example, acoustic measurements detected 2 distinct low-frequency tones, one at 36 Hz, generated by a cooling tower, and another around 10 Hz from an air compressor. Modifications were made, and while some complaints subsided, others continued. In West Seattle, a local hum was eventually traced to a vacuum pump used to offload ship cargo. Once the pump was altered, the complaints stopped. In Windsor, Ontario, officials pointed to a steel plant on Zurich Island as a likely culprit. And when the plant idled operations in 2020, reports of the Windsor hum declined significantly. But this explanation doesn't fit every case. In Taos, there were no factories or large industrial installations. Sensitive microphones detected no unusual tones, and the scientific survey found no measurable noise source that could explain what residents were hearing. In Bristol, England, the hum persisted for years despite thorough searches for local mechanical sources. And even in Kokomo and Windsor, where plausible industrial explanations were found, some residents insisted the hum continued after the supposed culprits were eliminated. This leads to the secondary category of explanations: natural or environmental sources. Some scientists have suggested that microseismic activity, vibrations generated by the movement of the Earth, especially from ocean waves, might produce low-frequency infrasound that occasionally resonates in certain locations. Others have speculated about atmospheric causes, like wind shear in the upper atmosphere, generating pressure waves. These ideas are possible, and we know that infrasound exists in nature, but there are problems with these theories. Seismic and atmospheric sounds tend to be much lower in frequency than what most hum hearers described, often below the threshold of human hearing. They also tend to affect wide areas uniformly, rather than small towns where only a minority of residents are affected. A third explanation is psychological. Some researchers argue that the hum might be a form of tinnitus, an internal condition where the brain perceives sound in the absence of an external source. Tinnitus is extremely common, affecting millions worldwide, and in some cases it manifests as a low, droning tone. In a 2003 survey, over 160 hum hearers, published in the International Tinnitus Journal, researchers noted several unusual features. Many hearers said that the hum seemed to interact with external sounds, creating interference patterns or beats. Some reported that turning their heads could suppress or alter the hum. Others said that after traveling long distances by air, it took hours or days before the hum returned in their new location. The researchers concluded that these reports pointed towards the possible involvement of the inner ear. If true, this might explain why some people hear the hum while others, even standing right beside them, do not. But even this theory doesn't fully account for the phenomenon. If it were simply tinnitus, why would large numbers of people in the same small community suddenly begin reporting it around the same time? Why would they describe it so similarly? And why would it sometimes vanish when a piece of machinery is repaired or shut down? That inconsistency is what makes the hum so elusive. In some places, industrial explanations are sufficient. In others, natural or environmental sources might be at play. And in many cases, individual physiology likely plays a role. But there is no single explanation that accounts for every report. Instead, the hum seems to be a phenomenon with multiple overlapping causes, united by the common perception of a low, persistent sound. There are, of course, more speculative theories. Some suggest that the hum could be a side effect of a government experiment or communication systems, particularly very low frequency, or VLF, radio transmissions. These are known to travel great distances and are used for submarine communication. Others point to electromagnetic radiation or secret military technologies. To date, however, no study has found electromagnetic signals correlated with hum reports, and no credible evidence supports these claims. Still, the secrecy of military operations has kept these ideas alive. More fringe theories range from the paranormal to the planetary. Some claim the Earth itself produces a resonant vibration that only a few humans can perceive. Others connect the hum to UFO activity, or to changes in the Earth's magnetic field. None of these ideas have supporting data, but they reflect how unsettling the experience can be. When conventional science cannot explain a phenomenon, people often reach for extraordinary answers. What makes the hum especially troubling is not just the mystery, but the impact on those who hear it. For some, it's a minor annoyance, a faint vibration that's easy to ignore. For others, it becomes life-altering. Cases have been documented where residents were forced to move away from their homes, unable to endure the constant sound. In extreme situations, people have described the experience as tormenting, leading to stress, anxiety, and in rare instances, even death. Whether or not the sound has physical source, the suffering it causes is undeniably real. Today, the hum remains unsolved, and there is no consensus in the scientific community, no single cause, and no definitive cure for those who hear it. The best current assessment is that the hum is not one thing, but many. Sometimes industrial, sometimes environmental, and sometimes psychological. A patchwork of causes that manifest in a single shared experience. And yet, despite decades of study, each new report reminds us of how little we truly understand. Consider the frustration of lying in bed, unable to sleep because of noise no one else can hear. You search your house, you step outside, you cover your ears. The sound doesn't go away. You tell your neighbors, your friends, even the authorities, and many of them insist it doesn't exist. But to you, it's as real as anything. That is what makes the hum a uniquely haunting mystery. Not just that it defies measurement, but that it divides perception itself. For some, it's a tormenting reality. For others, it's nothing at all. The Taos hum may have brought the phenomenon to the world's attention in 1993, but more than 3 decades later, we are no closer to answer. The hum continues to appear and disappear in towns across the globe. Sometimes it can be explained, sometimes it cannot. And until the day it's fully understood, it will remain one of the strangest, most unsettling mysteries of modern life. So, tell me, do you hear the hum? Stay curious, and as always, thank you for watching.